Hey everybody, I am Kevin Iole. I appreciate you joining me. And today I have a very special guest. If you follow boxing anytime in the last 30 or 40 years, you know this face, you'll know the voice. I am joined right now by the great Jim Lampley, a boxing Hall of Famer, especially known for his work as the best play-by-play boxing announcer of my lifetime. Jim, welcome. I appreciate you joining me.
I appreciate the compliments, and it's a pleasure to be with you, Kevin. And I have tremendous respect for you too, as I'm sure all your audience members understand and know.
Thank you. Um, you and I, it's a great opportunity on Friday. We're going to do a live chat on the pay-per-view.com broadcast of the heavyweight fight between Francis Ngannou and former unified heavyweight champion Anthony Joshua. So I wanted to go over a couple things about this with you. And I want to start here with Joshua. I mean, I think there's an extraordinary amount of pressure on Anthony Joshua to win this fight, right? Always pressure on the British fighters to perform and step up and win big. But now he is fighting Francis Ngannou, the former UFC champion, after Tyson Fury had a lot of trouble with him. And Joshua wants to get himself back in the title mix. And I think there's an enormous amount of pressure on him. I wonder how you view that. Do you see Joshua being a guy that is carrying a burden into this fight?
Absolutely. And I think he's been under extraordinary pressure his entire career because of the expectations that have been created by, number one, just the way he looks. He looks like what a heavyweight champion is supposed to look like. Number two, it's Great Britain. And they still very strongly believe they created and invented the sport, that they are the cradle of boxing. And for a British heavyweight champion to assume that crown and control it has been their holy grail for a long time. Joshua had a chance to do that after his epic victory over Vladimir Klitschko in Wembley Stadium. I was there at ringside for that. I'm sure you were too. One of the most memorable things I've ever seen in boxing. In fact, my colleague, whom I greatly respect, Max Kellerman, called it the greatest sports event he had ever seen. And at the end of the day, that heightened all the expectations and the hoopla and the drama that surrounds Joshua. And, we can talk all day about how he has fallen short of fulfilling what British fans wanted. But there's still a chance there. And one of the chances is he's involved in terms of British emotion in this spectrum of expectations and hopes and dreams in a proxy war with Fury. And there's always a sort of comparison going on. What did Joshua do? What did Fury do? So Fury got a, quote, win over Ngannou, which in terms of expectations becomes a loss. He barely won a decision. He got knocked down. And if Joshua succeeds against Ngannou and succeeds more decisively than Fury did, that's a win in the proxy war. And I think that, they may resist that framework, that way of looking at the narrative, but it's inescapable. They're two great British heavyweights. They both had a chance at one moment or another to be the legitimate heavyweight champion of the world. Neither has totally solidified it for the long haul.
Jim, I think there's a comparison with another British heavyweight champion who I think is the greatest British heavyweight of all time, which, of course, is your former colleague, Lennox Lewis. And, Lennox had the great expectations coming out of the 1988 Olympics, and he was fulfilling them. And then he runs into Oliver McCall. And he loses that fight, and there was all that wailing and gnashing of teeth in the UK about what happened to Lennox then. And Lennox kind of got his career turned around and went on to fulfill the expectations. And I wonder if you see any similarities there with what happened to Lennox and how he was able to turn around. And then you take AJ's loss to Andy Ruiz in 2019 and what he is trying to do and what he has subsequently done.
There's a very direct similarity, because if you look at the single most important decision that Lennox made, Oliver McCall knocked him out with a shot in the dark, a clean right hand. Oliver McCall was trained by Emmanuel Stewart. Lennox turned around and within a couple or a few weeks after that, fired Pepe Correa as his trainer and hired Emmanuel Stewart, rebuilt his career with the greatest architect of heavyweight champions of his or maybe any other generation. So what has Joshua done? He's hired Ben Davison to to reconstruct his game and be his new trainer. Davison has a past history with Fury, so there's a similarity in that regard. It's clear that at this relatively late stage of his career, Joshua is still looking for the answers, the solution, the pedestal that will give him permanent control of an identity that he can take on into posterity. But in order to get to that particular plateau, he now has to get past this wild card, this massive power punching UFC fight.
I want to ask you one more question about Anthony before we move on to Francis, and that's this. He was with Rob McCracken as his trainer from the Olympics, before the Olympics, for a long period of time. Then finally the pressure built and he switched. In the last couple of fights, he's gone from Robert Garcia to Derek James to now Ben Davison, with Derek James kind of advising in the background. And do you think that's too much to put in a guy's head? Like, would that concern you that in a 5-fight period he has 4 different trainers?
Short answer, yes. The answer from where you and I sit and what we've seen over the past 30, 40 years in boxing, yes, absolutely. Why did Lennox's career solidify, and why did he gain functional control of the heavyweight division and manage, regardless of what the American audience saw or gave him credit for, to get the better of both Holyfield and Tyson? Because he had Emmanuel Stewart. He had the greatest trainer of that training generation telling him what to do. AJ obviously hasn't quite found that comfort zone and that pedestal yet, but maybe this will be the beginning of that. And then at some point, before their careers are over, Joshua has to fight Fury, right? Doesn't that fight have to take place to fulfill the current destiny of British heavyweight boxing?
I think we have to see it, although I hope it's not like Riddick Bowe and Lennox Lewis, because that was the one that we did not get. But let's move on to Francis Ngannou, and I want to run this past you. I had a chance the other day to talk to Dewey Cooper, who is the trainer of Francis Ngannou, and I asked Dewey if he thought that AJ would have an advantage because he wouldn't be surprised by Francis, or when Tyson went into the ring, there was no film on him, he had never boxed, he did not know what to expect other than that he was a big hulking guy. And Dewey Cooper said something interesting to me. He says, we are so much better now than we were then that I don't care. He said he has that 30 minutes. If he thinks that's the guy he's facing, he's going to be mistaken. And then here's what he said that I thought was really interesting. In that Fury fight, Dewey said he told Francis to pace himself. And he said he was worried if Francis could go 30 minutes, 10 3-minute rounds. He said he no longer has that concern. When you hear a trainer talking about that, what do you make? What do you make of Cooper's words?
Trainers are paid to develop the best and most ideal expectations and sell that scenario, sell that belief to their fighter. I think he's absolutely saying the right things, but whether deep in his heart Ngannou really believes that he can go the distance, or AJ really believes that they can go the distance against each other, they're going to find out in the ring. The only evidence emerges when two guys are hitting each other. How hard do they land, and how effectively for how long? I'm sure that Ngannou will enter the ring with a far higher level of confidence than at the moment when he entered the ring against Fury. He proved a lot in that period of time, and so now AJ has another very difficult challenge in front of him, and he has fallen short a couple times in the past against guys that you didn't think were going to be enormous challenges for him. See Andy Ruiz. So with all eyes on him and all expectations surrounding him, and with the mantle of being a legitimate former heavyweight champion going in against an MMA guy, Joshua has to win. It's as simple as that.
Jim, here's the thing. Like, I think people, when they saw Ngannou in the fight with Fury, they look at it as a case of black or white. And I think it's more of a grayscale, where in the one sense they said Fury just didn't take him seriously and didn't show up. On the other hand, there's all these MMA fans that said, Francis, we told you how good he was. He was way better than you gave him credit for. Where do you think it falls? Do you think it was, that Fury simply wasn't there mentally? Or do you think Francis, showed that, hey, you know what, while maybe I'm not ready to win the heavyweight title yet, I have skills that people are underestimating?
I think it was both. I think it was very definitively both. I mean, Fury had spent the months before that fight participating in a vanity reality television project. I watched the show a couple of times. Anytime you have entered into an immersion in, quote, reality television, you have entered a world of unreality. And I think that Fury took his eye off the ball and somewhat warped his life by having cameras all around his home and clowning and showing off for the cameras and engaging in, again, the vanity that goes with that kind of project. Pure distraction. Visible symbol that he wasn't really taking Ngannou seriously. Ngannou, ultimate rags to riches. Sand mines? Whoever heard of sand mines? Living on the streets in Paris, et cetera, et cetera. It's a Charles Dickens tale of transformation. And now he has this large sense of himself and a level of self-belief to which he was not entitled before. What is that going to mean going into the ring against Anthony Joshua? I think this is a fascinating competitive mystery about to unfold in front of us.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I guess let's wrap up with this. In my take on this, I think Anthony Joshua has to fight like he did against Otto Wallin. Now, while I don't think there's any comparison in the style of fighter that Otto Wallin was with Francis Ngannou, AJ was aggressive and he kind of fought going downhill. And to me, that's always been the best AJ, where he's imposing his will on whoever he's fighting. And I don't think he can let Francis back him up and bully him, because I think in that case, all of a sudden you start, AJ may start thinking those dark thoughts that he's had in different fights. So how do you see it? Do you feel like it's incumbent upon AJ to bring the fight to Francis and stand his ground if need be and exchange right hands?
Well, I think that's correct, but within a certain envelope. He's a boxer. He has a classical training in the past as a boxer. Ngannou comes from a slightly different mentality, although I think a lot of us probably make too much of the difference between boxing and MMA. It's still a fight. And a fight is a particular kind of psychological challenge that doesn't exist in any other, quote, sport, unquote. And that's what makes people like you and me addicted to it, is to watch human beings try to function within this kind of pressure. Has AJ ever had the kind of pressure in his life that comes from working in the sand mines or living on the streets of Paris to try to survive? I don't think so. So Ngannou has been deeper into the well. Does AJ have technique, skill, clinical understanding of how to fight in these rules with this equipment that Ngannou doesn't have? I think, yes, absolutely he does. Is that what won for Fury? Part of it, yeah. So AJ has to stay in a boxing envelope, stick with a boxing mentality, treat himself to the confidence that he's the one who knows what he's doing here. And then the most important part, don't get hurt. If Ngannou hurts you with any one big shot, now you've got a different proposition.
Francis is the finisher. Well, anyways, I just want to wrap there. I appreciate your time. I want to remind everybody, you and I will be doing a live chat on the payperview.com broadcast of Joshua Ngannou.
And people can participate with us,
right?
Which is, part of the thrill of this live chat thing is that Jake in Omaha can send in his own opinion as to what's going on.
If we could get Jake in Omaha and Fred in Denver and anybody else, I would be very happy to get those questions. So join us on that pay-per-view broadcast. It starts 1 o'clock Eastern time on Friday, March 8th. Jim, I appreciate you, brother. Thank you for your time. Great job.
Thank you, Kevin. Great to see you and great to talk to you. Look forward to Friday.
Thank you.